This is a review of the single-player campaign for Star Wars Squadrons, which I played on the Xbox Series X. This game was developed by Motive Studios and is published by Electronic Arts. To start off, I'm a fan of the Star Wars franchise, and I enjoy a lot of Star Wars video games. Also, this review is going to have spoilers, so spoiler warning. This game is about space battles, and it's a lot of fun. The very popular X-Wing and TIE fighters are here, along with slightly lesser-known ships like the Y-Wing. The game starts with a prologue shortly after the Death Star's attack on Alderaan. You make two custom characters, one for the Empire and one for the Alliance to restore the Republic, or the New Republic as it later becomes, each with different voice options. I made a female character for the Empire and a guy for the Republic. I kept the default name for the Republic character, which was Bo Thalarin, but I changed the name for the girl. Default name was Sab Hayduke, and I changed it to Sabrina Duke. Now, like most games where you can pick a name, you never hear it spoken, but it appears in the subtitles, so that's cool. After the first mission, the story jumps forward in time, so why don't we talk about the story? Most of the game is set shortly after Luke and Anakin Skywalker defeated Emperor Palpatine. The Empire is in shambles, and the rebels have established the New Republic. At this point, the Empire has not yet become the First Order. The interesting thing is that it's a little bit of a reverse of the normal Star Wars narrative. The Empire are clearly the underdogs in this conflict. They are split into a bunch of factions, they're low on resources, and they have to go up against a Republic WMD. The Republic, using crashed or stolen Imperial ships, has built a huge battleship that is way stronger than Imperial Star Destroyers. One of the Republic characters even makes a comment that points out the similarity between their Project Starhawk ship and the Imperial Death Star. So instead of the rebels in an uphill battle against an Imperial WMD, it's now the Empire fighting an uphill battle against a Republic WMD. So that's the basic story setup. Now let's talk about characters. While your custom character doesn't have too much personality, the rest of the characters are actually pretty well done. The main villain, Captain Carol, is a well-written villain. She is angry, driven, and relentless when it comes to accomplishing her goals. She has a personal grudge against Lyndon Javes, an Imperial defector, who is now a Republic commander. Javes is a cool character. He's a smart leader who knows how the Empire works because he was once one of them. Javes was horrified at what happened to Alderaan and defected because of it. Javes played a huge part in the construction of the Starhawk as well. There's also an appearance by one of the pilots who flew alongside Luke Skywalker. This pilot is Wedge, and it was cool seeing him in the game. Wedge mentions that he normally flies with Rogue Squadron, but was temporarily reassigned to help with Starhawk. Now let's talk about the squadrons. As the title of the game suggests, there are multiple squadrons as the main characters. There are two Republic squadrons, which are Vanguard and Anvil Squadron. Your character is a new member of Vanguard. Vanguard is a small elite group, while Anvil is a larger force. For the most part, Anvil is simply there as the group that your Imperial characters fight. In the Empire, you play as part of an elite squadron as well. Let's start with the Republic. The standout member of Vanguard is Grace, who comes from a family who runs a business that builds TIE fighters for the Empire. When it comes to Vanguard Squadron, something I found weird was how some of them casually talked about enjoying fighting the Empire. They're happy that they get to kill Imperial fighters. Now, I know this is a reflection of how the player is having fun fighting the Imperials, and I know that they're fighting the bad guys, which, they're fighting against this evil force. But it still felt a little out of character, just how much they talked about how they enjoyed the warfare. And, since they're the good guys of the story, I don't know, it just felt a little off to me. Part of it is because Frisk, another one of the Vanguard Squadron members, he's a former criminal who joined the rebels to find protection from various factions that wanted him dead. Frisk's criminal background hints to why he enjoys the warfare. Now moving on to the Empire Squadron. They are actually more memorable than the Republic fighters. The squadron leader, Gray, is a little bit boring, but the rest of the crew is pretty interesting. Von Reg is an angry and deadly fighter who has a few screws loose. She's really intense, the kind of character you don't want to meet in a dark alley. Even her teammates sound intimidated by her, and they're happy she's on their side. Then there's Saul. Saul is a lot more level-headed, and she talks about how she really wants the Imperial Senate to be restored. Her parents were senators before Palpatine dissolved the Senate. She thinks that if the Senate were still around, the Empire wouldn't be so fractured. Then there's also Shen, who doesn't talk much. When Shen does talk, you learn that he's been shot down and severely injured during the war, and he's kept alive by cybernetics, similar to Darth Vader. You learn later that Shen was shot down by Anvil Squadron, which gives a personal layer to their battles with Anvil Squadron. The other interesting thing about the game is that it shows you part of why these characters decide to fight for the Empire. For Saul, it's likely because of her parents' involvement with the Imperial government. However, the interesting part is Captain Carol's reason. Whenever your character completes a mission, Carol and the squadron are rewarded. While failure is harshly punished in the Empire, success is recognized. The Empire are obviously the bad guys, and they commit several horrible war crimes during the game, so I'm not justifying these characters' actions. Instead, I'm just saying that the game is showing how the Imperial leaders are manipulating their people and keeping their loyalty. I found it to be an entertaining element of the story. Now let's talk about set pieces. Of course, there's fighting in space, which is already a cool setting for a work of fiction, but they take it a step further. They have some really cool places for you to fight in. Two standout locations are a space storm and a broken moon in a nebula. Also, when you're flying around space stations or a structure of some kind, it's really cool. Parts of the game reminded me of that really cool final space battle in the movie Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Okay, so now let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay is great. There are a variety of ships, and there are customization options as well. I'm not talking about cosmetic customization here. I'm talking about how in the campaign you can switch out engines, weapons, gadgets, shields, and hulls. This means that someone else might have a completely different setup than me when they're playing the campaign. Now, not every level lets you modify your ship, but a lot of them do. I personally enjoyed throwing on the engine that lets you stop fast and accelerate to max speed fast. It's cool how much effort they put into the ships. I was surprised when the Republic and Imperial ships played different. The X-Wing has shields, but at least one of the Imperial ships doesn't. This sounds like a disadvantage, but it has a benefit as well. In the game, you can divert power to different parts of your ship. For a ship with shields, you can have the power balance between engines, weapons, and shields. If you need extra speed, reroute to the engines. I did reroute to the engine a good amount because, it gives you a boost capability. Now there is I think it's an engine that lets you have a boost without diverting power, but anyway. If you need some extra firepower, reroute it to the weapons. Most of the time, this is where I put my power because it recharges it faster, you store more, and it does more damage. Now you can also reroute to the shields when you're under heavy fire. After I got out of the beginning parts of the game, I barely did this, but it's still there if you want to. Now if your ship doesn't have shields, it has a different mechanic. Now this mechanic, I'm going to admit, I only used it right after it was introduced, so I don't actually really remember what it was. I think it might have been something where you can divert all the power in your ship into one system in particular, put everything into weapons, but then you can't move because your engine doesn't have power. I might be confusing that with a different mechanic, but I think it was something along those lines, so don't quote me there. The mechanics are pretty deep. There are gadgets that allow you to give shields to allies, which are good for defense objectives. There are launchable turrets, there are countermeasures for incoming missiles, there are repair droids, lock-on missiles, and more. One of my favorite pieces of gear was an Imperial attachment that let your TIE shoot a powerful green laser. It felt like a mini Death Star on my ship. I remember using that in a fun mission and taking out hangars that were on this Republic base so that they couldn't send out reinforcements. I'm sure a skilled player could use the various gadgets really effectively, like tailoring their loadout to each specific mission. If you're going on a higher difficulty, you probably would have to get good with the nuances of the mechanics. But yeah, once you get into the groove, the combat is really fun. You fight other fighters, but you also take down capital ships. On capital ships, such as Star Destroyers, you can blow up specific parts to disable certain systems. You also fight off turrets, and you can also buzz the hull of the ship if you want, just for a cool moment. Now, the difficulty was well balanced. I played on pilot difficulty, and it was fun and had some challenges. It's balanced, but it did feel like there was a difficulty spike in the last mission. Yes, the last mission should be the most difficult, but compared to the previous level, it was a significant increase. It's a defense objective, which is a difficult kind of objective in any game. Also, if you're trying to pull off the optional objective of taking down, I think it's 2 Imperial cruisers, then it's a bit rough. TIE bombers will attack these 2 Republic corvettes with everything they have. The corvettes have shields, but once they're depleted, they're gone. Also, my loadout wasn't the best for this. I considered going back to the Republic hangar and switching gadgets, or even switching ships. However, I just decided to put the pedal to the metal and get through it with my current loadout. A friendly tip: don't engage any TIE fighters or TIE interceptors. Prioritize the TIE bombers, and if you want the optional objective, do some hit and run shots at the cruisers, fly under their shields so you can get right to the hull. Alright, I'm not going to spoil what happens at the end of the last mission, but it's pretty cool. Now, I am going to talk a lot about the second to last mission, the conclusion of the Imperial campaign. Before the level that I was just talking about, the Empire has cornered the Starhawk near a broken moon in a nebula, which is one of the locations I mentioned earlier. It's time for Sabrina Duke, or whoever your character is, to take on Lyndon James and wreck the Republic WMD. Again, it's like the Empire is doing what the Rebels did in the first movie. Instead of a Death Star laser, the Starhawk's main ability is a really powerful tractor beam. Sabrina blows a huge hole in the Starhawk and flies into the tractor beam reactor. She severely damages it, and an energy wave launches her ship out of the Starhawk through the same hole she entered. Also, Sabrina does manage to shoot down Lyndon James, and the Empire defeats Anvil Squadron, letting Shin get his revenge. And I told you this was a spoiler review, so I'm just going to say it. Lyndon actually does end up surviving. So, it's not kind of a complete victory for the Empire, which is good because they're the bad guys, but they do successfully take down the Starhawk. This mission was a lot of fun. Every mission is fun. This game has cool levels, great gameplay, and a solid story. This game is a great entry into the Star Wars franchise. Before I wrap up the review, let's take a moment to talk about the impressive stuff that Motive Studios pulled off. This game has full VR support. I didn't play any of it in VR because I don't have any VR systems, and I played it on Xbox, which doesn't have VR. When you're actually playing the missions, it isn't very noticeable that it's also a VR game, but when you're at the hangar and the briefing room, I can see where the VR comes into play. This game also features crossplay in the multiplayer. I did not play any of the multiplayer, which is why this is a campaign review, but that's a great feature for people who do play MP. Crossplay is cool because you can team up with your friends. If you're on Xbox, you can play with people on PC and PlayStation, and that's just cool. There's also a really cool feature where you can play the game without any of the normal video game HUD overlays. HUD overlays? Is that the right term? What I mean is, when I played, I had stuff pop up on screen when I was tracking another fighter, showing distance and direction. However, the information that the game gives you is actually fully presented on the in-game instruments in your ship. That means if you wanted, you could actually play the whole game just using the onboard display. I didn't try this, but it would have been way harder. I'm just thinking about using that little radar to actually figure out where the bad guys are. That would have a learning curve right there. Also, I know that most of my reviews are mostly positive, which is mostly because I like reviewing games and other stuff that I like, but I did have a few issues. In the Space Storm level, I kept going into the storm, which gives you a timer telling you to go back to the safe area. The problem is, while I was fighting, I felt like the flow of the battle kept me going into it. Now, this isn't the game's fault, it's not the developer's fault, it's just that I'm not the best Star Wars Squadrons player. Now, the other problem were some glitches. One time I was talking to someone at the hangar, or maybe it was a briefing room, but anyway, their character model was glitching. Like, they were turning themselves, but then they'd snap back to their previous position, and that would repeat. It's a really minor gripe, I know, but I just thought I'd mention it. The other problem was sometimes the objectives wouldn't spawn, and I would just be flying around looking for something to do. Now, this happened after I had left the game and came back to it, so it might have something to do with the Xbox Series X quick resume feature. Anyways, if I remember correctly, closing the app and booting it back up fixed it, and I was back to my adventure. So if this happens to you, don't just fly around like me, close the app, restart. The checkpoints should save you pretty close to where you left off. If that doesn't work, try backing out to the main menu and just restart the mission. Have you played this game? If so, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for checking out this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like it. Also, if you have any requests for stuff that I should review, comment below. It can be video games, TV shows, movies, books, whatever you want to see me review. And I'll look at the comments, and if I see something that I would like to review, I'll check it out and I'll put a review here on the channel. I really do enjoy doing reviews in my free time, so I'd be happy to take requests. Of course, I wouldn't do it if it's something I didn't want to check out, but if it's something I'm interested in and it's something I want to do a review on, yeah, why not? Okay, have a great day.